All right, in this lesson, I'll review the transpose method and see what happens when we call it on a multi-index data frame. And really the key takeaway here is that the index to the left, our main horizontal index, is not the only thing that can be multi-index. In fact, we can have a multi-index on our vertical axis among our columns. So let's demonstrate that. I'll re-execute our code to bring our data frame back to its original state. And I'm going to call my transpose method directly on my data frame. Remember to include those parentheses. And there I'm going to get my transpose data frame. Now, as a reminder, what transpose does is it swaps the axes. So it takes the vertical column here, which is priced in US dollars, moves it to the left to the horizontal axis. It also takes the multi-index from the left and then swaps it and moves it up to the top. So now you can see we have a single row of price in US dollars, and now we have a hierarchical multi-index column multi-index. That's quite a mouthful. But here we can see we have the date, and underneath the date in the second layer of our column multi-index we have all of the countries and then our values. So we can see here we have one row by 652 columns instead of 652 rows by one column, as we see right here. So as I scroll across, we can see we have our truncation occurring in the middle, and we conclude here with the end of our data set. Now, the transpose method does not affect the original data frame, and it also does not have an in-place parameter. So to actually overwrite Big Mac with this new data frame, I'm going to reassign it back to Big Mac. And just so we have a preview, I'm also going to call the head method. And technically, we don't even need to put more than one here because we only have one row. So here we can see our original data frame, and here we can see our new one that's been transposed. Now let's just try one example with extracting values. We're once again going to do the IX method. So I'm going to call IX on my Big Mac data frame. IX takes square brackets instead of parentheses. And now our situation is a little bit different. Now our index to the left is our regular old single index. So we can give it single string values. So for example, I don't have to provide a tuple here. I can just type price in US dollars. And of course, if we had multiple columns in our original data frame, then they would have been transposed as multiple rows in our new transposed data frame, and we could specify the specific row that we wanted to extract. In this case, we only have one row, which is price in US dollars, so that's the label that I'm providing here. And when I execute this, you'll see that we're going to get a series. It's going to be a multi-index series where we're basically taking the values from our multi-index column setup and representing them right here. Now, if we wanted to extract a specific value, we have to place a comma here. Remember that the very first argument is the row level label or labels, and the second argument is the column level label or labels. So now we have to provide more than one criteria. Remember, because now we have our multi-index in the columns, which is our second parameter. So now I'm going to do a parentheses here to provide a tuple as my second argument this time around. Now again, I can extract it with just one argument. So I can begin with my most outer layer, which is my dates. So I can do something like 2016-01-01, January 1st, 2016, which we can see as one of my available values. If I do that, I'm going to get a single indexed series where I'm going to have my second layer of my columns represented as my index labels and my cell values represented as my regular series values. And if I want to dial in and extract a specific cell value, I can provide a comma inside this tuple, because remember, I'm still feeding in this tuple to represent more than one value at a time, which is going to represent each label from each one of my indexes or multi-indexes or levels or layers, whichever way you want to look at it. Provide a value to extract from every layer of my column-based multi-index. So from the very top level, which is date, I'm extracting January 1st, 2016. And now if I want to provide a second value for my second layer, which is country, I could write in something like Denmark. And so now it's going to extract this row. That's my first argument. And then from the multi-index column collection, I'm giving it two values that I want to extract, one for each level. And then I'm going to get the price of a Big Mac in Denmark in January 2016, which is $4.32. Now, I wanted to keep these tutorials simple, so I only demonstrated having a multi-index on either my horizontal axis or on my vertical axis, but you can absolutely have a multi-index on both. In that case, all you have to do is just have a tuple for both of your arguments. A tuple for the first argument to extract the proper collection of index labels from your rows, and a second tuple in the second argument to represent the labels from your columns. So that's a little bit on the transpose method, as well as an introduction to multi-indexes on the opposite axis, which is the vertical axis. The syntax, as we can see, remains pretty similar. You just have to be careful with your tuples and the order in which you give the arguments.